past, we've discussed violence in video games, 10 games that positively depict women, and we've discussed prostitutes and strip clubs in games, and why they're there. But there seems to be an idea that the body language of female characters in games is sexist. The way they walk and the way they sit. But this isn't the case, and in this video we are going to be discussing why. As argued by Anita Sarkeesian, in video games, often do sit like delicate, fragile beings, but there is a reason for this. Thus, I regurgitate an argument from an earlier video. The purpose of any game is to place the character in a realistic virtual world in which they can escape the real world and become the hero or villain of a story. To do this, the virtual world must be based off the real world. To start with, let's just look at how both male and female characters sit down. Now, if we had to look at how the male sits, he is relaxed, his legs are spread, he appears confident and strong. When the female sits down, she appears delicate and elegant, seeming to be a much higher social class than the male in the way they both sit. I say this for a reason, and that is because it has often been found that women, on average, have a habit of code switching up, whilst males have a habit of code switching down in their appearance. This is so that they appear to be either a higher or lower social class. In a few videos that will be coming soon, I'm working on them at the moment actually, we'll be discussing code switching in a lot more detail. But to give a quick and brief overview as to what code switching is, we'll look at our daily lives. We adapt to our surroundings. When you're in a professional environment, you would most probably code switch.
A famous explorer once said that the
I'm not serious about this expedition, Laura. It's not just Sam's family funding us. I put my savings on the line too.
We've all got some kind of stake in this. The funding won't last forever, Whitman.
That's precisely why we should push east, not west.
No one believes Yamata is that far east.
When in a social environment, you would most probably code switch to act and seem more sociable. And depending on things like your social class and a load of other factors, you'll code switch up or down.
Sam, this is serious.
Oh, sweetie, I know. I'm just trying to lighten the mood here. Everyone's so on edge. What are you so worried about?
I'm close to something. I'm sure of it. I just don't know if the others will listen. Or even if they should.
Laura, you know this stuff better than anyone.
So, to put it bluntly, you code switch depending on your environment and the company that surrounds you at the time. Women have been found to have a tendency of code switching up in social class, in social and professional environments, whilst men have been found to have a tendency to code switch up in a professional environment and code switch down in social environments. Thus, it now makes sense as to why the female character sits so elegantly, almost like a delicate flower, whilst the male sits in a relaxed fashion, not really caring as to how he appears to those around him. Both sitting positions demonstrate confidence in very different ways, due to them appearing to be from different social classes, even though they probably originate from the same social class. We can also reinforce this with visible evidence. Let's just look at how women and men generally sit. With only these simple examples, we can see that men and women do generally code switch in the ways stated earlier. And then there is the way women walk. This has also been claimed as a sexist representation of women in games, as apparently it is to add emphasis to the woman's butt as they walk in the game. However, again, this just isn't the case. The female pelvis is flatter, more rounded, and proportionally larger to assist in childbirth. it's believed that the female waist-hip ratio contributes to a hip sway when walking, in order to balance the weight. And it has also been suggested that when a woman is most fertile, her hip movements become slightly more exaggerated in order to attract the additional attention in order to reproduce. This sort of biology has also been mentioned in a previous video, when we discussed how it's not sexism or sex that sells, but biology. But it's also believed that the attractiveness perceived for a woman is increased by around 50% when they walk with a hip sway. And thus, because a woman naturally walks with a hip sway, it is going to be found in video games, regardless of it increasing the attractiveness of a woman. But more so than anything, a woman in real life walks with a hip sway in order to balance. When you lift one foot, you are out of balance. And if you don't do something to compensate for that loss of balance, you're going to fall over. That is why women walk with a hip sway. Even though men do it as well, it's just in a different way. The broader hips that women have gives a more noticeable hip sway. And it isn't a conscious thing. Well, at least not past 18 months of age. And have you ever seen an 18-month walk? You can tell it takes a lot of work. The broader hips that women have gives a more noticeable hip sway. And it isn't a conscious thing. Well, at least not past 18 months of age. Which, have you seen an 18-month-old walk? It's not easy. So, in games, it's not a case of misrepresenting women, nor is it a sexist representation, and it certainly isn't an intentional attempt to bring the attention of the gamer to the butt of the character as they walk. It's literally making the game more realistic so that it can meet its purpose, to be a realistic virtual world in which the audience can escape to. Thus I conclude this video, stating that both the way women sit in games and the way they walk isn't a sexist representation of women. It's just realism. This subject will be expanded on in later videos, as soon I will be releasing a set of videos called The Tropes of Protagonists, which will be discussing the stereotypes used to produce unique female protagonists in games, and will go far more in depth than this video has. In those videos, we will be discussing the dialect, body language, surrounding events, and actions of female protagonists, and what makes them who they are.